What?
You have mail.
I what?
You have mail.
Put it on the counter, please.
It's a box.
A box? From who?
Victrix.
Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to this review of the newly released Victrix Medieval Foot Knights. And may I also say congratulations everybody, because we did it. We did the long wait. This kit was announced, I think, late last summer, around the time that their mounted knights came out, and we have a review for those up on the channel. And so this kit has been, at least for me, and seeing chatter online, highly anticipated. So very happy to finally have this in my hands. If you're new here, hi, welcome. What we're going to do is we're going to go through and look at the sprues individually. We're going to do breakdowns on all the bits that are included in the set. We're going to assemble some figures. I like to do scale comparisons with some different manufacturers, and then I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the kit. So huge thanks to Victrix. You guys deserve to know that they sent this to me for free to take a look at together and review with you guys. So again, big thanks to them for sponsoring this video. And if you're not familiar with Victrix, you should know that all of their kits now come in these plastic baggies. I think only their older Greek figures, maybe some old Napoleonic stuff, still come in boxes. Everything else has transitioned to these bags. And the only concern I hear raised about these bags is, fears about stuff breaking in transit. And I say this in all my Victrix reviews. I've bought dozens and dozens of sets from Victrix over the years, direct from the manufacturer, and I've had no issues with them whatsoever. And the other benefit is if you see this in like a retail setting, you can get some idea of what the contents of the box are going to be. So this is otherwise very similar looking. You've got this little artwork up on the top, and now just some completed examples of the figures from the set. It used to be that they would have kind of instructions on the different bits and how they were included. And so for those that saw the Germans review that we did, I think just last month, you will recognize this pamphlet. This is a newer thing that Victrix has started doing. So let me separate. There's three unique pieces to this set. So you're going to get 4 of this main sprue, 8 models per sprue. You can get 2 of this heater shield sprue, and then you're going to get this 1 pamphlet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate 1 each of the heater shield sprue and the main frame, and put everything else aside. And I want to take a look at this pamphlet with you really quick, because as I mentioned, this is similar to what we saw in the Germans set. This is something that they've just now started doing, and is kind of an evolution from, I mentioned, like in the early days, on the back of that piece of cardboard it would just state the bits, like breakdown of the bits numbers, and then tell you which bodies they went to. Then they transitioned to kind of like this, but no color coding. We saw that with like the Norman crossbowmen. And now we can see they've gone and they're basically presenting the same information in 2 different ways. So you've got their like blowout of the various figures and what the bits look like. And on this side, it's the same information as I said, but that it's showing the location of the bits on the sprue, which makes it a little bit easier for tracking things down. But it's also color coding them. So there's really no guesswork. You can at a glance see like these arms are compatible with this body, which is pretty cool. Again, it's good to have information presented multiple ways. It looks like the info on the back is the same as the info on the second page. I was staring at it for a while and I didn't see any difference. I think it's just because they had the space, so they figured why not, let's just throw it back there. So no issues with that at all. The only other thing I wanted to note other than that is that you'll see, and we'll go into more detail on this on the sprue, that there are certain heads that are only compatible with certain bodies B5 and B6. And you can see here that's because they have what looks like a unique attachment point here, where the coif has been like kind of sheared off. So these heads without some cutting work wouldn't fit on any of the other bodies. The other heads all go on all the other bodies, and then this head, it looks like, is unique to this body. So yeah, it looks like there's some extra attachment point. Again, we'll look at all those details on the sprue itself, but just some interesting notes. And the only other thing I wanted to kind of reassure you on, because this jumped out at me at first, like this body, for example, if you were just looking at this, you might be led to believe that this body is only compatible with this arm, or that this arm is the only arm compatible with this body. Having dealt with lots and lots of Victrix sets, I can tell you just from looking at like these arms have the exact same attachment point as this body, right? Or that it looks like these arms would fit on here without any issue whatsoever. And my first instinct was it looks like almost all of these arms, with the exception of like this overhead guy. Yeah, that might be the only one I think that is like a unique attachment point. Confirmed on the back of the instructions here, where they say any arm can be used on most figures. So again, that's a little bit confusing unless you read on. I almost wish they'd put this like in big letters here in the middle just to reassure people. But that these are suggestions for the most part. The only exception to that are like these here, and then certain heads that have to go on certain bodies. Everything else is kind of a suggestion. So anyway, enough about the pamphlet. Beautiful stuff. I'm going to start collecting these because I just find them to be so cool. And let's dive in. I'll start with the smaller sprue first, which is the heater shields here. So there's 2 of these included in the set, as I mentioned, and there are 28 shields per sprue, which is really impressive because there's 32 miniatures in the box, which means I think they could have gotten away with just putting 1 shield in here, or shield sprue in here. So giving us 2 is great because it obviously means that every single model can have a shield, but it also means you're going to have 24 leftover shields for whatever you want. And if you're like me, you like having lots and lots and lots of stuff in your bits box. Backs of the shields are all sculpted, which I really like to see. And there's actually 3 different designs upon glancing at things here. So you've got this 16. I'm just going to call it, I think they're all technically heater shields, but I'm just going to call these slightly more rounded designs heater shields. So there's 16, this is per sprue, so 32 of these per set. You've got 6 of these more kite shield designs, and these on the back you saw had those kind of like square cutouts. So 6 of those per sprue, 12 per kit, and then you've got 6 of these. I'm sure there's like a French term for this, but these like more, you can see there's a very subtle difference between this and this. This is more pointed. I'll call these the pointy shields. 6 pointy shields on the sprue, so 12 of those per set as well. So very useful, very versatile. Again, you're going to have tons and tons of extra shields, and I wager, if they haven't done already, the Victrix will offer those up separately. And here is the main event. So this is the main sprue. Again, you're going to get 4 of these in the set, 8 miniatures per sprue for 32 per set. And really quickly, there's 2 other sets of plastic foot knights on the market. There's this semi-recently released Wargames Atlantic foot knights, which is covering kind of the same subject matter, that was released last summer. Those are $35 US for 24 figures for about $1.46 per figure. There's the Fireforge set, which is kind of old. It's been out for a number of years. That was the first one on the market. And that's $35 US, the same price point, but for 40 figures for about 88 cents per figure. This entry from Victrix is interesting because it's 32 figures for $40 US. And that means it's about $1.25 per figure. So it's squarely in the middle of the other 2 entries that are on the market in terms of price point. And again, we're all hovering around the $1 price point per model mark, which is what I like to see for plastics. So very reasonable. And as I said, they're kind of right in the middle of the other options that are on the market. So let's take a look at the front and the back of the sprue here, and then I'm going to give you some breakdowns on these bits. And I'll tell you already, everything looks really fantastic. We have come to expect a very high production quality from Victrix. So again, we're looking for mold lines here, and there really aren't any. It's like maybe like right there. But again, this is all very normal stuff throughout the industry and stuff that you could scrape off with a fingernail, as I keep saying, but certainly with a file or an X-Acto knife. So minimal cleanup, minimal flash. Everything's very well sculpted. No miscasts anywhere. So let's take a look at these bodies. So remember, there are 8 bodies per sprue, 32 per set. And you can see here that there are 3 actually that are just in chainmail, which I think is historically correct, that not all foot knights at this period of time would have been wearing these. I think they're called tabards, but I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. So yeah, you've got 5 models that have what I'm going to call these tabards, and then 3 that are just in chainmail, which is great because I mentioned those other 2 sets that are on the market for multi-part plastic foot knights, and all of those have tab. None of them are just in chainmail. And the chainmail, you can see, I think, is some of the best chainmail we've seen from Victrix. Really beautifully done, where not only is it very finely detailed, but you can see it's even conveying some movement, which is super impressive. All the belts, I should say, are very well sculpted throughout, and then you've got nice movement on the cloth here too. Speaking of movement, two figures over here are noteworthy because they have specialty attachments. So this guy's like a two-parter, and he's the one that has the overhand weapon options here, but we'll get to that in the weapons section. And it looks like these two pieces are kind of the skirt part of his, again, I'll call it a tabard. So yeah, it looks like you can make a pretty menacing looking guy there. This one here is interesting because it's the feet that are detached, or the legs, and those are down here. And you can see there's actually a subtle difference between them. I don't know if it's just in the fact there's some padding here, like knee pads almost, or if there's also a slight pose difference between them, but I'll play around with that when I'm building them. So yeah, bodies all look fantastic. Again, you're going to get 32 in this set, 8 per sprue. Let's talk about heads. So we're going to jump to the top and the bottom of the sprue, which is where the heads are located. And normally I like to categorize heads, but we're talking about foot knights here. Sorry, I got like a bashed up fingernail there. We've got 22 heads around the frame. And there are a couple that I recognize from the knight's frame, but there are quite a few that are new here too, especially these like kettle helm style. And they all look really, really good. I mentioned that 7 of the heads are going to be unique to 2 of the bodies. And then 1 head, which is this one down here, is going to be unique to 1 body. So what that leaves you with are 14 heads for the other 5. I guess really it's 6 of the bodies because the 1 head is unique to a body, but it's not the only head that body can accommodate, if that makes sense. It makes more sense when you look at the pamphlet. But I say all the time with Victrix sets that I like to play around anyway with looking at what you can do versus what Victrix recommends. But yeah, really beautiful sculpting on these. Everything's fantastic. And here you can see those attachment points that are different from these kind of like socket attachment points, which will make it to where the chainmail is more flush. That goes on these here. So the chainmail coif is going to be flush on the back of the helm. So it's cool to have that option. So from there, the sprue is rounded out with, I had to count it like 5 times. There's 29 weapon arms scattered around the sprue. So I've done this a couple of different ways. So rather than like kind of making you motion sick by jumping all over the sprue, I'm just going to slowly kind of rotate around the sprue and rattle off some numbers for you here. So in terms of weapon options, you've got 6 one-handed axes, and there are a couple that are like just detached wrists, hands with wrists that you could then attach to different arms. But 6 of them can be one-handed axes. You've got 8 that can be one-handed swords. 3 that can be a mace or a flail. I'm going to flip it now just so you can see from the other side. And then you've got 7 that I'll just kind of generically call spears. Some of them are clearly designed to be like banner pole standard, but I'll just call them all spears. So 7 spears, some of which are longer than others. And then you've got 5 two-handed weapons. So let me point the two-handed weapons out specifically here, because you've got 1 down here, right? And you've got 1 here, which is more like a Dane axe design. And then 3 are actually the ones that go on this one overhand body. I'm going to flip the sprue one more time here because it's easier to show you. This overhead swinging body goes with these 3 weapons here. I'm sure with some conversion work you can get these arms or hands onto one of these other bodies too, but this is the one that's designed to accommodate it. So you got, again, you're going to have, I guess, 1 repeat weapon over the course of the kit, which is not a big deal at all. So yeah, the weapons all look fantastic. Really nice mix here, and nice to see spears included with the foot knights here. So from there, though, what you've got are a handful of accessories, right? You've got a musician over here. I mentioned there's some standards in the form of spear options. And then look over here. I love, love, love. Well, first of all, they include not 1 but 2 severed heads, which is fun. You've got this guy here, which is holding a sword out. And then this little crucifix option here. So again, Victrix does such a good job with this, with including bits to add like character to these figures for unit champions if you're using that in a game system that has those, or individual characters for role-playing games or skirmish level games. And then you have 8 scabbards that are scattered around the sprue. So one for each figure, and you can see each scabbard, like pay attention to the scabbard design, how each one is slightly different, which is super cool. And I like the thickness of them too, to make them look kind of beefy and intimidating. Like this one even has like a jewel at the end of it, so really cool. I actually hope, like the shields, that they introduce sprue of just like scabbards and accessories. I think that would be successful. One last thing to note on the sprue in terms of accessories. One, I forgot to mention on the heads that there's this one kind of quirky looking head option that goes on top of one of these helmets. And then I also forgot to mention this kind of weird looking weapon down here, which I think was historically accurate. I remember seeing it once before, maybe in like an Osprey book. But I don't even know what you would call that. Again, help me out in the comments if you know. But also, one last thing to mention before we start putting these guys together is that there's a loose stain axe down here with the accessories, which is pretty cool. So there you have it. Very robust and full frame. Gives you lots and lots of options to play with for all your Foot Knight needs. So let me do that now. I'm going to put some of these together, and we'll see how they all stack up. Okay, here we go. So I've put some of these figures together, and some different weapon configurations, just to give you an idea of what some of these different poses look like. And as ever, I think everything looks fantastic. Should be no surprise. Really nice dynamic poses that you can get out of these guys. They were kind of, I think, surprisingly easy to put together too, given that there were a handful of figures there that were multi pieces in terms of like the torso and the legs. Like this guy here had detached legs, but I think it took me like, yeah, just under 30 minutes to put together 8 of these guys, which is no big deal. And I'm going to tell you a secret, don't tell Victrix, but that I actually didn't even use the pamphlet to put all these guys together. Confirming that, as they say, basically all these arms are interchangeable. There are a couple of poses that are clearly designed to go together, some arms that are definitely meant to go with certain bodies, but like even this one, I don't think that arm's meant to go with this guy, but I think it works just fine. He's shouting back to some comrades there. A couple other thoughts. So this is one figure that I put together that is using actually an arm from the Mounted Knight set. I took a couple of heads out from the Mounted Knight set out of my bits box, and found that all like the dry fitting, that everything works perfectly fine, which makes sense because some of the heads in this set are copies from the Mounted Knight set. So yeah, the heads are definitely going to work, the arms definitely going to work, and it leads me to believe actually that if you have the like Mounted Norman set, for example, I think you could use bits from that set, kit bash it with this one to make some like dismounted Norman Knights, which is something that's not currently on the market. And you can make some like Norman heavy infantry with their infantry set. But this one, actually, I just used some arms from this set and threw it onto the Wargames Atlantic. This is a foot sergeant body. So the only proportion issue here that I see is that the legs look a little bit skinny, but that's because these don't have chainmail. But if you had it on the Foot Knight body, I think it would work just fine. So yeah, they're very compatible in terms of scale. So with that, let's throw them on the Lazy Susan and see how they properly scale up with some different manufacturers. All right, here we go. So I have a number of models from different manufacturers and ranges from some of those manufacturers spinning around here. The miniatures primed in white have those manufacturers or ranges listed in red on their bases, whereas the unprimed, just plastic models, are of course from this Foot Knight set. So generally my assessment is that Victrix is kind of middle of the road in terms of 25 to 30 millimeter figures, so they fit in pretty well with just about everybody. And then the one specialty figure I have here, that's a painted Foot Knight from Wargames Atlantic, just to show you how those two ranges scale up for anybody that might have already had some Wargames Atlantic figures in their collection and wanted to add some of these Victrix ones. What's the final verdict? It's fantastic. Of course it's fantastic. We all knew it would be fantastic, but it really did blow me away. The not only level of detail, but the variety of options that are included in this set make it great for skirmish games, make it great for mass battles game. On that note, I feel like you can get some really dynamic poses out of these guys, of course, but I also feel like these would rank up without any issue on 20 or 25 millimeter bases, whatever you want. And I feel like I keep saying this too, so I'll just address it, which is that it seems like with every kit, I keep saying this is the best kit that Victrix has put out. I think I definitely said that with the Germans last month. I'm pretty sure I said that with the Rus last fall. At least I felt it, whether I said it out loud. I pretty sure I said it with the Mounted Knights they released last summer. So this is no exception. This to date is the best kit that Victrix has put out. And that obvious pattern is because Victrix just seems to keep building on their prior successes. We see that in more illustrative ways, like with their pamphlet design, which they keep seeming to improve on. I know for a fact that they listen to feedback from customers by like increasing thickness of various weapons, spears, stuff like that, adding in, swapping different options. So they really have such an attention to detail that make them, I think, the industry leader for multi-part plastics, and it makes me very excited to see what's going to come out next. So once again, huge thanks to Victrix for sending this to us to take a look at. Another home run. Very excited, as I just said, to see not only what comes out next for the medieval line, but for anything from Victrix, really. So I really appreciate all of you guys for dropping by for this one. Plenty more review content to come. So until next time, happy gaming.